This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Today is another very special edition, one that we always look forward to. The 4, 5, 6 times we talked to him during the season and during the offseason. Greg Cosell, who is the executive producer, analyst for NFL Matchup, and also the guru just over there at NFL Films. He also does a great in-season podcast with Fantasy Points, and he also did this year, I think for the first time, where basically your notes that you go through, because you watch a lot of these guys all during the year, and you take meticulous notes.
I watched over 200 guys, Greg, in detail. I'm a one-man scouting service.
There you go, and those were put on Fantasy Points as well, and I was looking over them, and surprisingly, a little bit, you took a look at you had taken a look at a lot of the guys that the Patriots ended up drafting. Not Cole Strange in the first round, so we won't talk much about Cole.
I know, he was a
bunch of guys.
There were 2 guys I missed on the first 2 days of the draft, which was the first 3 rounds, and unfortunately, Cole Strange was one of them.
Yeah. So make sure you guys go over, if you want to, all of these profiles are up there over at Fantasy Points. Go check it out. It's really great. Just going off of Tyquan Thornton, you have Greg's strengths, weaknesses, sort of other bullet points on the player. And then, which is the important thing, and we'll talk about some of these players, is how Greg sees their transition going from the college to pros, like what they're going to need to work on, what they might struggle with, how early they might play, depending on the scheme, that sort of thing. So invaluable stuff. If you're still interested in the draft and the guys as a whole in this league who you're going to be seeing, go check it out over at Fantasy Points. So Greg, welcome. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Sure. Love it, Greg. Love it. Love being with you.
So you did not take a look at Cole Strange, so we're not going to talk about his evaluation.
Well, other than he's going to transition because he played tackle in college, and everybody knew he wouldn't play tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, and what's interesting, at the Senior Bowl, he played almost exclusively center.
Yes.
Which actually, after watching as much film as I could on the kid, a lot of Senior Bowl, I think he played against Kentucky at some point in time, which was sort of his coming out party. A bunch of draft picks on that Kentucky defensive line. I think that he's obviously going to play right away. I mean, you don't draft a guy in the first round at guard and not play him right away. And we'll see how he competes. I mean, I do think right now he's a little bit light in the lower body for me. I think he's going to need to get a little bit stronger there to really hold up against some of the bigger guys in the league. He struggled with Travis Jones from UConn at the Senior Bowl, but so did everybody. I do think, though, to me, I saw center all over him. He looks to me like an Alex Mack type of guy who can get to the second level at an elite rate, and we'll see what happens. But as far as Cole Strange goes, what I wanted to discuss with you is, I just wanted your opinion on sort of the value of taking an interior offensive lineman, especially if a guy's going to be a guard. How do you see that value in today's NFL game? I mean, I have my opinions on it, especially looking at the recent Patriots teams who we've seen, from Dan Connolly, Brian Stork, and Ryan Wendell in 2014 to Joe Tooney, David Andrews, and Shaq Mason. None of them drafted higher than the 3rd round, all playing immediately for the Patriots. I have my doubts about what the value is in taking a guard there, let alone Cole Strange, who may or may not have been available later. But I'm just wondering your thoughts from talking to people around the league, just in general, on your thoughts on taking an interior offensive lineman in the first round.
Well, here's the way I would answer that question. And again, I don't think there's a right or wrong. Okay, I think we all agree because we don't know. I would say that the first thing I think about when I see the way a team drafts, because when I do my evaluations, and I want people to understand, I do all these before the draft, so I don't know who's going to be drafted where, is I think about Sundays in the NFL. I think about how teams have to play. And so let's now make this specific to the Patriots. The Patriots were more than most a running football team a year ago, more than likely, given who they have on their roster and what they did in the draft, drafting running backs as well, they're likely to start their offense with the run game and have Mac Jones be, I don't want to say a system quarterback because everybody's a system quarterback, but not be the focal point of their offense. So now, if that's the way you're going to play, so let's say you start your season and you don't have a very good offensive line, but that's the way you want to play because you think ultimately it fits best with your quarterback and what's on your roster from a running back situation. And you get to week 3, week 4, and you can't run the ball and your offense is stalled. And Mac Jones, because he's a certain kind of quarterback, he's really good at what he is, but he's a certain kind of quarterback, and your offense is stalling. So then what happens? So then people say, well, we can't run the ball because our offensive line's not very good. So my point is this, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just saying that if this is the way your team is, and I believe this is the way their team is, then a guard has greater value to the Patriots than it might to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
So we can sit here and say, well, they could have gotten a really good guard in the 4th round. Well, we don't know that. Nobody knows that. They obviously, and by the way, I spoke to another O-line coach who's been in the NFL for more than 30 years, who actually loved Cole Strange. Now, he didn't say where he would draft him because I don't ask guys that. You know, right. I try to talk trades and, you know, I try to learn when I talk to coaches. I don't ask them where they're going to draft guys because, to be honest with you, Greg, I don't care where guys get drafted until they get drafted. So, you know, the point being that if Cole Strange is what the Patriots think he is, and he's a day one starter at guard, and they can line up with Stevenson and Harris, and I know they have other backs because they drafted them. Who did they drafted? One I liked, as I recall. I don't have their list.
Yeah, Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris, both.
Right. So they want to be a running football team to start, and this allows them to be what they want to be and do it well. Then I think you say, well, the pick worked. You know, I'm not a believer in you could have gotten a guy later or you should have waited till this round. Number one, we don't know that. And number two, they obviously had Cole Strange rated highly. Yep. I mean, far be it for me to say that they're right or wrong in their evaluations. You know, reasonable people, Greg, as you well know, can disagree on evaluations of players. And in this business, you're wrong more than you're right. Even if you're a great drafting team, you're wrong more than you're right. Because it's still, no matter how much we rely on analytics or sports science or whatever, and this is only increasing, it still comes down to human beings evaluating human beings. So people are wrong more than they're right. And this is the way the Patriots want to play. And if Cole Strange turns out to be Logan Mankins, I think people will probably say, hey, that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Also part of the Cole Strange pick, the Patriots traded down from 21. They were on the clock. Some of the players that I thought, might fit them included Trent McDuffie, who the Chiefs traded with the Patriots for and took, one of their rivals. Quay Walker went the next pick to the Packers. Kaiir Elam went into the division to the Buffalo Bills.
Well, obviously, Buffalo actually traded up right after the Chiefs did that because they wanted a corner.
Yeah.
So I think they had the pick right after the Chiefs took McDuffie.
I think they went 2.
Oh, no, it was one pick later. It doesn't matter.
One pick later.
The point is the Bills knew that there could be a run on corners and they needed one.
Absolutely. Tyler Smith went to the Cowboys at 24. If the Patriots, I thought they had more of a need at tackle for the future with Isaiah Wynn in his final year of his contract, and also Trent Brown with a lot of weight clauses and hasn't exactly been Mr. Durable. And Devin Lloyd, the linebacker at Utah, were all there. I just, real quick, any of those guys that really intrigued you or that you were really high on?
I can only tell you my evaluation. I loved McDuffie. McDuffie was one of my favorite corners in the draft. I thought he was a great prospect. They do a great job. Maybe it'll change now because Jimmy Lake is no longer at the University of Washington, but he was their DB coach and then their head coach. They've always done a great job with corners. I thought Trent McDuffie was a really high-level prospect. I really like Kaiir Elam as well. He's a press man corner at Florida, played with competitiveness and swagger. He played their boundary corner. I really liked his tape as well. I think Devin Lloyd was a playmaker type linebacker. Look, you and I can't get into Bill Belichick's head. Well, I know I can. Maybe you can, but I certainly can. I certainly can. I think that Lloyd is he had a playmaking feel to his game, that he wasn't totally disciplined in the way in which he played, but there was a playmaking feel to his game. Who knows? Maybe Coach Belichick thought, yeah, I don't like the fact that this guy, there's a little bit of a recklessness and a lack of discipline to his game. I don't, again, I'm trying to get into Coach Belichick's head. I can't do that. And then you mentioned, Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith, to me, has to be totally reworked to play tackle in this league.
Oh, wow.
He's a young kid. He's very athletic, a great run blocker in terms of the fact that he's nasty and competitive, needs so much work in terms of pass pro. I actually think that he needs to start his career inside, and he may not even be ready to start year one. So, from what I've been told, Cole Strange is a plug-and-play player, and Tyler Smith, to me, is not.
Yeah. What about Quay Walker? What did you think
I loved
of him?
I loved Quay Walker. I thought he was the best of the three Georgia linebackers, 6'4", 240. Jamin Davis from Kentucky was drafted by Washington last year, I believe, with the 20th pick. Yep. I liked Quay Walker more. They were equivalent in terms of size and length. And I thought Quay Walker was a really, really good prospect. But again, this is my evaluation. They may have evaluated them differently. I can only tell you what my evaluation is.
Yeah, absolutely. One more guy I wanted to ask you about real quick, because I didn't look at him before the draft because the consensus was he's going top 10, top 15. Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. Is he a guy that would have fit what the Patriots do, or is he just sort of an upfield, pin the ears back, go after the
No, he was a really good run defender. I love Jermaine Johnson. I thought Jermaine Johnson, my feeling is, and again, this is my feeling based on tape and then projection. Yep. And this is the part where guys get it wrong, and maybe I'll be wrong. But I thought Jermaine Johnson, that when we look ahead 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, that he'll be the best edge player in this class. That was my view of Jermaine Johnson based on tape study. He's a really good run defender. I think he's scratching the surface of being a pass rusher. He's long. He's athletic. I really liked his tape a lot.
So the Patriots in the second round, they draft after taking a guard who most people hadn't heard of before the draft, trade up into the second round and draft Tyquan Thornton, a tall, skinny, blazing fast wide receiver from Baylor, who surprisingly wasn't even invited to the Senior Bowl, stood out at the Shrine Bowl. But Greg, this is a guy that I think you were higher on than most, that you were very intrigued by watching his film.
Very intrigued. I thought he was, along with Jamison Williams, the two most explosive vertical receivers in this draft class. And I thought his track speed showed up on tape. He got on top of, he ran by corners. He primarily, almost exclusively lined up on the outside. I thought that there was some physicality to the way he played, too, some toughness to him. He competed and played a lot tougher, Greg, than his thin frame might suggest. And that's what really stood out to me. I thought that he had a feel for defeating press coverage as well. He's a South Florida kid. And most South Florida kids, as you probably know, they've got grit to them. They've got toughness to them. You have to when you play high school football in South Florida. Or
even youth football.
Probably, yeah. I'm sure you're right about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I made the point in my notes that I said he probably will never be a true high volume number one target, but I also thought that he could be far more than just a one note vertical receiver. But I really liked him. I knew nothing about him. Other than what he did at the combine when I started watching his tape, and obviously he ran a 4.28 40, which was the fastest by any wide receiver at the combine. He ran in-breaking routes, which, to me, that's a tell. When you see guys run a lot of in-breaking routes, slants, in-breakers, you have to catch the ball in the middle of the field in the NFL. The game in the NFL is played much more in the middle of the field because of the hash marks, whereas the college game is played much more on the perimeter because of the hash marks. And I thought that he showed that toughness. He made some contested catches. I really liked his tape. I was truly surprised. And I'll say this. I didn't think there was much of a difference at all between Tyquan Thornton and Chris Olave, based on purely on tape study. Now, Chris Olave played at Ohio State, and the helmet logo often says a lot about the way people view players. And we'll see as time goes on. Like I said, maybe I'll be wrong, but I really like Tyquan Thornton's tape.
Yeah, I didn't know much. I watched him a little bit. Basically, I'm not much of a draft Nick. I don't like to waste my time on, since I'm covering one team on watching 300 guys when my team's going to pick like 8 or 9 of them. And I try to watch the top 3-ish rounds guys or take a look at guys at least. And I remember taking a look at Thornton early on and I kind of was like, oh, well, he's fast, he's tall, skinny. I don't know. I don't see much. But then after the Patriots drafted him, obviously I went into the film and I watched multiple games on him. And I came out with the same conclusion that you did, Greg. That I was surprised that there was more there than just what you heard out of a lot of draft guys after this pick was tall, skinny, small hands, small wrists, fast, straight line guy. No, there's more than that on film. If you watch him, like you said, the in-breaking routes, that shows me something that the coaches and the quarterbacks show trust in the guy. He plucked the ball out of the air. Yes, he had a couple really nice boundary catches against, tough coverage, even on some of the ones he didn't come up with. He fought hard for the ball, just didn't come with it at the last second, but he was right there. So I agree with you. There's more there. I don't know whether I would have taken him this high. I might have tried to sneak him into the 3rd round, but there's something there with this kid, and it'll be interesting to see whether he pops or not, because I think he's sort of the litmus test on this draft class, and sort of we all know what the Patriots draft history is at the position. Hasn't been good.
And then again, I don't know any of these kids because I don't get to interview them. Obviously, George Pickens was there, but George Pickens supposedly has issues. I thought George Pickens, by the way, was the best receiver on tape in this draft. That was my point of view. I thought Pickens was 1 and Jameson Williams was 2. I actually thought Jahan Dotson could have been pretty close to that as well. But Tyquan Thornton, to me, I will echo what you said because I watched him in great detail, as you can see by my evaluation. I mean, that's pretty detailed, as you can see, Greg. So. And as I said, I didn't know much about him at all. I thought that he had an 8-yard touchdown versus Oklahoma in the red zone on a fade route where he defeated press man really cleanly with an inside stick. And, it's funny. I remember seeing the same play by another receiver who went high, and now I can't remember who it was. And people raved about, oh, he's such a great route runner. But Thornton did the exact same thing. But because, Greg, he was not thought of that way, the narrative, Thornton wasn't part of anyone's narrative. So no one said anything about him. But I thought the tape said all you need to know. Yeah.
And look, I've known you for years. I know the way you operate. So I'm not going to ask you, which of these guys is going to have the more successful career? Because you and I both know it all depends on scheme, coaches, quarterback, all this other stuff. Yeah. But just, there was a whole group of receivers taken there. Thornton, Pickens, Alec Pierce.
I love Alec Pierce.
Sky Moore as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Alec Pierce. I was in the minority. I thought Alec Pierce and Drake London were very similar. Now, Drake London went 8th. I loved Alec Pierce. I saw a comp for Alec Pierce after I did him, which I didn't think of, but I thought it was a very interesting one. And the comp was Jordy Nelson. And I think I loved Alec Pierce on tape. Again, you know me well enough to know everything I say is based on watching tape. And hey, could be wrong. But like you said, there's going to be 10 variables that we don't know about right as we're speaking today.
Absolutely. 3rd round, they took Marcus Jones, 5'8" cornerback out of Houston. I love the kid, baller, returner. What do you think of him?
Love the kid. I know Bill doesn't play a lot of cover 2. And who knows, every year is different with Coach Belichick. Obviously, he could totally change because he may not feel like he has great man corners now. Who came to my mind watching Marcus Jones? First, let me talk about Marcus Jones. He played outside corner, which you won't play in the NFL. Unless they're playing against a 5'9" wideout. He played the slot, which he could play in the NFL, and he played safety. He's an explosive athlete now. He's twitchy. He's sudden. So the guy I thought of in terms of deployment, okay? I thought of Tyrann Mathieu, who's 5'9". Yeah, he's 5'9", Matthew. I think Marcus Jones could be your middle hole defender in cover 2. I think he could be a starting safety. I think he could play slot corner, all these things that Tyrann Mathieu does. I loved Marcus Jones' tape. The times he got beat as an outside corner at at Houston, were because he was 5'8", where guys went up over him. But he's not going to play outside corner in the NFL.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, they went with they doubled up a cornerback with Jack Jones, a kid from Arizona State who originally was at USC, has some off-field issues. Yeah. What'd you see out of Jack Jones?
He played outside at Arizona State. He's a slot corner because he's 170 pounds. But, he was the number 1 or number 2 recruited corner coming out of high school. He was big time coming out of high school. And like that, he went to USC, as you said. His tape, he's actually a really talented kid. I mean, but because he's 171 pounds, it's hard to see him playing on the outside. But I think has all the needed traits to be an effective slot corner. He's smooth, he's fluid, he's got some twitch to him. He can play man, he can play zone. Even though he's 170, he's physical and competitive because, as you know, slot corners have to do a lot of things. They have to be able to play man. They have to be able to play zone. They've got to be able to play the run. They've got to be able to blitz at times. So I think that in the right situation, he could be a starting slot corner. That's what I said. Obviously, the situation he's in now is in New England. I don't know how they see him, but I think he's a slot corner.
Let me ask you this, considering you mentioned this with Marcus Jones, just talking out loud about this. So you said that he could be sort of like Honey Badger. Can play a variety of ways, has done that in college, even free safety.
Yeah.
Could you see a situation, because the Patriots, what they have now, Devin McCourty's in his final year. You have Kyle Duggar, who's a box safety. Adrian Phillips, who's sort of a box safety, plays a lot of robber for the Patriots.
Right.
Jabril Peppers could play some free safety, but I don't know. He's more of a box safety. Could given development, could Marcus Jones play a free safety in the Patriots scheme and Jack Jones be sort of the next slot cornerback? Could you see something like that happening?
Well, to be honest with you, with Coach Belichick, you could see a lot of things because look what he did with Adrian Phillips. I mean, Adrian Phillips was a guy who I did coming out of Texas. And I remember saying to myself, well, this guy's a dime safety in the NFL, which he turned out to be, by the way.
Yep.
But look at the way Coach Belichick uses him. He's essentially he's almost a combination linebacker, as you know. He plays at times, he covers tight ends at times, doesn't play a whole lot on the back end, but will on occasion. I mean, what Coach Belichick does with a lot of these kinds of players is really fascinating to me. And, he doesn't just put these guys in a box, which is why, when they drafted Marcus Jones, I thought, wow, that is really intriguing to me because I think he can play multiple positions. And my strong guess is Coach Belichick thought the same thing or he wouldn't have drafted him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's deal with the two running backs together here. They drafted Pierre Strong out of South Dakota State in the 4th round. They drafted Kevin Harris out of South Carolina in the 6th round. Are they the same type of backs or are they different? Okay.
They're different. Pierre Strong, he's kind of a smooth, linear, darting, slashing runner. He almost looked rhythmic at times. He's got big playability. It's a little bit of a smaller back. I think that he's probably not a feature type back in the league, but I don't think he was drafted to be one by New England. I think that he can be a really good receiver too. He caught the ball easily. I think there's much to be unlocked as a receiver. I think you can detach him from the formation.
Sorry, Greg. So
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
In comparison to James White is coming back from hip injury. They don't really have. They have J.J. Taylor, and they've given him some shots, but it doesn't seem they're sold on him. Could he fill sort of a pass back role for New England given development?
I think, yes, he could. I think he could do that for sure. I think, whether that happens this year, but, that I can't answer because you don't know about a guy's development. But I think he can be in that role and then be kind of a complementary back. He does have big playability as a runner. No question about that. I mean, he's kind of a smooth, slashing. He almost looks rhythmic when you watch him. Now, he played at a lower level of college football, but I think that he can be that guy.
What about Kevin Harris? Is more of a every down, first two down
Kevin
back?
Harris, maybe I didn't see him. Where's he? Oh, I have him. I did see him. Kevin Harris is the South Carolina kid, right?
Yep, exactly. Had an injury a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's it's so funny how drafts work out, because there's no mystery to Harris. I mean, he's a decisive, competitive, naturally powerful downhill runner. And here's what I typed. I don't know if you saw, you read my thing, but I said that that features in an offense that features the run game as a significant foundation of their offense, much in the way Jordan Howard worked for the Eagles, and to a lesser extent the way Damian Harris was used by the Patriots. He's not as good a runner as Damian Harris, but I think that's what he is. There's no mystery to Kevin Harris from South Carolina. He's a grinder. Yeah,
well, Greg, I'm sure you don't keep up with every depth chart, but just for your information, I mean, look, like we said, James White's coming back from hip surgery. He's not even cleared yet. So the future of third down back in New England is up for grabs. Damian Harris is in a contract year. They have Ramondre Stevenson right behind him. You could very easily see either Damian Harris being dealt this year, depending on, say, so Kevin Harris fits there if they need a replacement for Damian Harris or whoever. And Pierre Strong could potentially be a James White replacement. So you sort of see how that lines up.
Which, by the way, goes right back to the start of our conversation, Greg, as to how they want to play. Now, I would imagine they will see Mac Jones over time developing into more than what he is now. And, what he is now, he was certainly very good as a rookie. As you and I discussed, he had some ups and downs, probably a few more downs than people might think, but he certainly was still very good overall. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, coaches nitpick. That's their job. I nitpick when I watch, because I learned a long time ago, we're evaluating quarterbacks to win Super Bowls, not to go 9-8. And I know Coach Belichick's doing the same thing. They're not interested in going 9-8. So Mac Jones had an up and down year, more ups than downs, but I'm sure in their mind, 3 years from now, they probably feel he can do more than he's doing now. But right now, they're a running football team. That's where it starts. So I think the point you just made is a very valid one. Damian Harris could be gone. They might see Kevin Harris as a guy who can fill that role, because when all's said and done, Damian Harris didn't get 20 carries a game. There might have been a few games he did, but that wasn't the way they ran their offense on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm. For their second, fourth round pick, the Patriots took quarterback Bailey Zappe.
Yeah, I watched
Western Kentucky. Yeah, what's interesting is that I have a guy who does the draft stuff for me, because I don't want to do the draft stuff. And I asked him, I said, give me a guy at quarterback that would develop for the Patriots, gave him the traits that the Patriots sort of look for. He said Bailey Zappe. So what do you see out of Bailey Zappe?
In an odd way, I kind of like Bailey Zappe. I mean, I think you have to know what he is. I mean, he's 6 feet. He, both at Western Kentucky and where he was before that, which I think was Houston Baptist, he ran a high volume passing game, a ton of schemed, manufactured, one read or no read throws. But I thought he also showed the ability to work through progressions and make throws that demanded higher level timing. He certainly had unbelievable command of that offense. It's the same offense he ran at Houston Baptist, because the coach came from Houston Baptist to Western Kentucky. He was detailed. He was nuanced. The other issue, though, which, again, how do you want to deal with this when you evaluate a guy, is because of the nature of the offense, Greg, there were a ton of just pitch and catch throws, throwing it to open receivers who had free access off the ball. I mean, it was just pitch and catch. So there's a lot of those kinds of throws. I kind of felt like he fell into the kind of Colt McCoy, Case Keenum, Tyler Heineke category. But if the Patriots see him as more than that, I could probably understand that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Sort of sounds like a lower level Jimmy Garoppolo,
maybe,
sort of thing.
Maybe.
Coming out from Eastern Illinois.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Garoppolo was a second round pick, and I'm sure when the Patriots took him, you would know better than I, they might have seen him as the heir apparent. It didn't work out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. In the 6th round, they took Sam Roberts out of Northwest Missouri State. I don't think you saw him. 7th round, they took Andrew Stueber from Michigan, who you actually did watch. So what did you think of Stueber?
Well, it's because of Michigan. I mean, they played. Yep. I saw Michigan a lot. So certain teams I see a ton just because of who they are. Stueber's an interesting guy. He's one of those guys because you wouldn't call him a high-level athlete, but I think there's a lot of right tackles like Andrew Stueber. I thought of Havenstein from the Rams, who's been a starter for years, another Big Ten right tackle. His Stueber's game is built on power and physicality, much more so than finesse and athleticism. He's kind of that old school right tackle, Greg. Again, they're a running football team. I think for what he is, he's not a bad player at all, and he's going to compete. He strikes me as one of those guys that's going to compete hard. That's the way he played.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, they definitely need help. Like I said earlier, they need help at tackle. They could use somebody as an option somewhere, given the cloudy futures for Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown. I mean, they still have Justin Herron and other people.
I wouldn't be surprised if Stueber, this is crazy. I mean, 7th round pick, but O-linemen tend to be a little different. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this kid plays this year. I mean, I think he's one of those guys. I mean, I ended my transition saying he would best be featured in gap scheme and inside zone and duo concepts, where his above the line power and play strength and competitive toughness would be maximized. That's the kind of player he is.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Greg, tremendous as always. I could tell you that Patriots fans, after listening to you, are probably feeling a lot better about this draft than after listening to some of us who talk about value and things like that. But I greatly appreciate your insight, and thanks for coming on.
Well, see, Greg, the key thing here is that you actually took a look yourself at Tyquan Thornton, and once you looked at him, and again, we have no idea what's going to happen. That's the bottom line point. He could be great, he could be terrible. We have no idea. But the point is, when you actually watch the kid and not just go by the fact that no one spoke about him, you kind of come away going, there's kind of a lot there to like.
Yeah, there is. It'll be interesting to watch him. That's for sure. Thanks, Greg. Thanks to everybody for listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast.